This is the Typhoon F12 that I've been using. It's on loan from the Cheshire Gun Rooms in Stockport. It's the short fore-end model. Colour's FDE. A few things that I've changed from standard. I've got a Magpul CTR stock on it, which is running on the Typhoon's standard tube. This is the original stock. I've never actually used this one. The reason I put that one on is on my previous gun, and that's what I'm used to. I have a Magpul limb saver on the end, which is a spongy foam pad on the end. An ergo grip, which is quite fat, has a palm rest, allows me to have a little bit extra control of the gun when I'm one-handed. An AR grip will not fit straight onto this. The fixings are slightly fatter, so you have to remove parts of the inside of the grip there. Any grip bought from Cheshire though, they'll fit it for you. This one doesn't have the standard mag release. This is the standard mag release, which will fit into the cutout that's there, and I'm trying out an extended one. And on top I've got an Oko sight. Inside the gun, pretty much everything is standard, with the exception that I have a shim in the recoil spring, and I'll show that to you later. And that's that. Right, we'll get down to taking it apart. Now the lower is held on by two pins, which are here and here. Before I take the lower off, the feed ramps are integral to the lower, and they're part of it, they're not replaceable. And to ensure that they don't have any contact with the bolt face when I take them apart, always put the flag in. That gives us this gap here, and it allows the feed ramps to clear quite easily. First thing I do is push out the back one completely and start the front one off. Hold them together, turn it over. You can see that it levers off. The feed ramps clear of everything, pull the front pin out, and there we go. Now this gun was fired on Thursday, fired 250 rounds. Hasn't been cleaned since, so we look at how dirty it is and how to clean it and take it apart. So in the lower, there's some oil that's come off the bolt and different bits and pieces. There's some dust and debris in there. Let's give it a quick clean out. This gun has had just over 2,000 rounds through it. It's had 750 game ball clear pigeon 30 number 6s, 1,000 Ely Superb 28 gram 7.5s, about 50 slug through it, a couple of hundred of odds and ends of other things, and probably about 100 to 200 rounds at Cheshire Gun Rooms when they've been testing it. So I figured I'd add it up this afternoon, and it's just over 2,000 rounds. So the feed ramps are integral. You can see them there. Done absolutely nothing to them. There we go. So then we have the upper. What I do is just take the flag out. Next part to come off is the fore end. The fore end is held by two pinch bolts at the back, and the fore end nut at the front here. Two tools needed for the whole gun. Take it apart. One is an Allen key that goes in there, and the other is a spanner that comes with the gun. Three parts to it. This part here goes over the barrel and takes off the fore end nut. This part here is for taking the stock off, and the other side, which is larger, is for the barrel retaining nut, which is underneath the fore end in here, and we'll see that in a minute. So the first thing I do is take that off the front. Then undo these two pinch bolts. They don't need to come all the way out, they just need to be loose. And the fore end is a pressure fit to the front of the gun, so it just pushes straight off. Then you have the fore end. In the front of the fore end is an insert, and that's what keeps it central on the barrel. Also on one side of it there's a ball bearing there which is retained, and it acts on the underside of this nut to keep that locked. You'll also see with the pinch bolt locates on this lug here. There's a pin here which is attached to the upper. When it all goes back together, that goes over, sits inside there, and it pinches onto it. So it's pinched on here and it's held on by the bolt, oh sorry, the nut at the other end. So here we have a gun that's fired 250 rounds since its last clean, and a fair amount of carbon power in there. We have two gas parts here, got some spares. So this part here, which sits over the holes in the barrel, the ports in the barrel, the gas comes up into it, and it then pushes this gas piston back. The gas piston pushes against the bolt carrier, and that compresses the spring, and that moves everything backwards. Get an idea of its operation. Now, when cleaning the gun, I normally just take a cloth and clean most of the rubbish off the outside first. First gas part just twists off. It has two O-rings inside of it. I'll show you on the clean one. There's two O-rings which sit underneath these ridges here. Okay, and the spares are available for them. We haven't had to change any of these yet. I say 2,000 rounds through the gun, and they're still going fine. It's a consumable part. So that part's off the gun. The gas piston, when the gun's been fired quite a lot, you'll find if I hold the working parts to the rear, it'll still slide reasonably free up here and operate the gun, but to come off the other way, there's quite a lot of fouling here, and what I normally do is clean the gun up here first before I try and remove this, because it tends to get very sticky there. So what I do is I hold the gas parts back and I clean the carbon off. And the way that I've been told to do it is by the use of wire wool and some sort of cleaning agent. I use frog lube, and that's what I do now. So once you've got the worst of that off, then twist that off. You can, and that came off fairly easy. You've got to clean it anyway, so you might as well clean it before it comes off. Because with the carbon that's inside that and on the outside of that, sometimes it's a real bit of a bind. And that's the quickest, easiest solution that I found. So we'll clean them up in a minute. Right, in order to take out the bolt carrier, we need to take out the bolt handle and undo the barrel retaining nut, which is here. And to take the bolt handle out, we need to push back on this and line the holes up, but I find that it comes out easiest once the actual barrel has been loosened. So with a handy little spanner, it'll undo by hand. Quite a lot of turns on this one. Before it's all the way off, what I'll do is I'll hold the barrel, compress the spring, and it'll line the notches up on the bolt and the handle. When it's in just the right place, it'll come out. He says. There we go. It's getting it in the right place rather than pulling harder. Right, finish removing the nut. So off, there we go. And the barrel, the bolt carrier, all the bolt assembly comes out, and you're just left with the body of the upper. I'll give that a proper clean in a second. So there we are, down to this bit. Now to get the bolt out, push back on the bolt carrier again. It'll drop down, that'll fall out. Careful when you're letting go of the spring, it just clears everything. Bolt carrier, spring. Bolt retaining nut and a shim. Now the reason this gun's got a shim, we had two issues with the gun when we got it. First one was the mags were over inserting. If I just grab a mag, I'll show you what the cure was. So the mags were over inserting in the gun, and on the test gun they welded these lugs on the outside of the magazine that stopped the over insertion. That cured that. On the guns that are coming in this summer, they won't have the lugs on the side of the magazine. They'll have two pins in the lower. There'll be two pins through the front of the lower here, which will stop the mag over inserting. So it's one of the modifications that they've made to it. The other issue that we had is when the magazines, quite hard springs, when they were completely full, the gun wasn't taking the first round out. It's fine if a full mag was inserted into the gun and it was fired, there was enough energy to take it. But if you'd run the gun dry and then put a new magazine in and drop the bolt, it just wouldn't take the top round. So we tried a couple of different possibilities. We've had some new springs manufactured, but what I've found with my gun is that the shim that's in here has given the spring enough extra tension to make it work. The guns that are coming in the summer again will have new springs, I believe new magazine springs and a new recoil spring to solve that problem. So there we have the gun in pieces. And I'll clean it up and we'll put it back together. Right, so there we have the barrels done. You can see on that wire wool and frog lube on all the outside. take all of that. Sometimes you get some really hard little deposits, and I'll give them a scratch up with the spiky tool there. Same in there. Wipe it all off. Push any of the frog lube that's gone in through the ports in the barrel. Put it through. Normally only put it through once. Say 2,000 rounds. There's no marks or fouling inside the barrel, so that's cool. That's out of the way. Bolt carrier is really just a wipe over. When I first got it, I buffed it up on a wheel and polished all the rails and stuff on it. Now the front of this will have carbon fouling in it, and again that's some wool. Okay, so he's done. The bolt will come apart by taking this pin out, knocking the pin through. Comes out the bottom, releases the firing pin, which will release everything else. I don't take it apart every time. In fact, I've taken it apart once. So I don't go overboard with that. I give it a visual inspection for damage. Make sure my extractor's still working. And that's as far as I go with that. Only 2 parts to go. 2 real parts, we'll just wipe these off. Wipe out the threads. So you've got the 2 gas parts. This gas piston gets a lot of carbon inside it. And it gets a build up, this shoulder in here, gets a build up in there, and I go ahead and I scrape it out first. You'd be there all day if you use the wire wool on it. You get the worst of it off. That's gone pretty well actually. Sometimes you get little hard deposits in that you need to scratch off. So he's done. So just this little fella. Just gotta be careful when you're doing this one that you do have those O-rings which are inside here. So try not to be rubbing the wire wool over the top of them because it's only rubber. Just make sure that the wire wool on the metal surfaces. And you'll find only the side that you've been using on this as well will have masses of carbon on it. So this, it's reversible, and you won't be able to see on the camera, but there's written on here heavy loads and there's an arrow pointing this way. So if you're using a heavy load, and they would talk about being 50 grams or more, so not really for our sport, but the arrow would be pointing back into the body of the gun, and I'll show you when the gun goes back together. But for the UK and for what we're doing, it should say light loads with the arrow pointing back, and this is the side that's used by the gun, the side that the gases come out and push the gas piston back. It's fun, you get a build up here. So you've got light loads and it's pointing back. So when it's on the gun, the body of the gun, the barrel and everything, light loads will be pointing back towards the body, and this will be over the top of it. Okay, and the gas comes up through the barrel into here and pushes this back and works the gun. and you'll find that here you get a build up of carbon along this ridge here, and really the only way to do is to scrape it out. Right, so that's done. Spring, I'll just give it a little wipe. Right, so let's put it all back together. First thing we need is the barrel, and we need the nut which holds it onto the body of the gun, to the upper. On my gun we have the shim for the spring. The guns in the summer will not have that, they'll have replacement recoil springs. Spring goes on. Then we need the bolt carrier, which goes on, and then the bolt itself. Now what I do is I take the extractor cuts out here, the extractor cuts out the barrel, place it in, hold it there, compress your spring, and then it just drops in. That's all together. Now I need to put this into the upper. One thing I didn't do was clean the upper, so let's get that a quick wipe out. Not a whole lot to it. You have the grooves that the bolt carrier runs through. Get a little bit of carbon up the front. That just slots in. What I do is I oil the grooves inside where the bolt carrier runs. A couple of turns on that. Press the spring. Come on. Why is it not lining up? There we go. Bolt handle goes in. Right, so we tighten that by hand. Take our spanner, large side. Do that. No need to go overboard on that. Right, so that's all done. Now take our gas parts. This is the gas piston, which is going to fit over this part, work everything backwards. We need to make sure on this part here, light loads and the arrow's going that way. We need to turn it round. Light loads, the arrow's pointing back to the body of the gun. Put the gas piston over it. Put both down on it. I twist it on over the threads. The threads for this nut here, so we've got those O-rings which are in there, and I don't want to put it down sharply, I don't want to damage anything that's in there. So now we're ready for the fore end. Fore end, I've never really bothered cleaning. What I do is I have a bottle brush for cleaning the inside of magazines, and I just get a quick bougie out. There will be a lot of carbon that's coming out and through it. That's pretty much all I do with it. Now the insert that goes in the end, make sure the ball bearing side of it is facing outwards. Pop that over the barrel. Make sure it lines up, just push it in. Okay, just check both sides are nice and flush. And then I'll do up the fore end nuts first. Again, do it up tight enough, but you don't have to go overboard on it. Check that everything's still flush. Do it with pinch bolts. You'll find, because there's two in a row here, if you do one up and then do the next one up, you find the first one's gone a little bit slack again, so do when you finish, make sure that they're both done up. Again, they don't have to be massively tight. Don't want them to fall apart. We don't want to strip them out either. So now get to this stage, I take a slightly cleaner rag and just clean all the oil and stuff that I've been messing around with off of the outside of the gun. We're ready for the lower again. Again, always remember your flag. So pop the flag in. Pull the pins out. Front in. Make sure your your hammer's reset, otherwise it won't go together. Goes together. There we go. Job's a good one. These pins are they take a lot of forces. Obviously, there's the front pins under where everything's going bang, and although these haven't worn, we've identified that it could be a consumable part in the future. I've got spares of them. And spares will be available of them. So in terms of consumable parts, all I can really see is that you're going to need at some point O-rings and possibly the pins in the guns. They're fairly straightforward, and the pins come with they're spring loaded inside. There's a little detent, and they're good fun to take out because the spring pings across the room and you spend half an hour looking for it on the floor. So there we go, guns back together. So that is the gun I've got. Standard out of the factory, the trigger is roughly a £6 trigger. This one is £4.5 and it's really nice. That's just Cheshire Gun Rooms cleaning it up for me. That's available as a service to anybody who buys the gun. And as well as that, I have a prototype for the bad lever, which was made by one of the gunsmiths there, by Steve. I'll probably do a separate video about bad levers. There we have it.